Okay, so just in case anyone asks, yes, I have had a haircut and a beard trim. Um, if you live in the Sunderland area, I would highly recommend the SB Academy. It's just opposite the cinema, and it's fantastic. Basically, it's a free service. You get free haircut, free wet shave. Because what they do is they train trainee barbers, and so they get the training, and the customer is getting a free haircut. But you are in good hands. There's always professionals watching, and yeah, it's free. So I strongly recommend that. And they're always a very friendly service. You can book on Facebook or phone up. That's the SB Academy in Sunderland, just opposite the cinema. Okay, so to get to the point, anyone who's been watching my channel recently will have noticed that I've been quite vocal about issues like Russia Today. Now, I absolutely stand by the things I said, but one of the things I wanted to do this year is get a slightly more positive angle with my channel. That is to say, have a bit more positive videos, not just videos where I'm discussing things that work me up, to be honest. Um, and I'll continue making those because I use my channel as a platform for my honest thoughts on things. But I do want to balance it out a little bit. So I've been talking about Russia today. I've been very critical of the Russian government. I don't want people to have the impression that I am anti-Russian. Okay. Now, no one has accused me of this so far, but I am aware that when there becomes a trend, when someone looks like they're being always negative about something, it can give that impression. So what I want to do in this video is talk about things I like about Russia. And this is entirely something I'm choosing to do myself. It's not like no one has shamed me into it or anything like that. It's just something I feel that I want to do. Okay, so Russia is a huge country, obviously. It's the world's largest country. It's a very, in my opinion, rich culture going back centuries. We go back to Kievan Rus and the 13th century when Moscow was founded. And it's a very fascinating culture. It may not be as ancient as Iran or Egypt or even Britain, but nevertheless, it's a long and fascinating history. And for me, that in itself, the fact that Russia is such a vast country, is inevitably interesting because there's always something to think about, always something to see. Now, I've never been to Russia. It's definitely something I want to do in my lifetime. Obviously, right now it might not be so easy because there's not that many British tourists go to Russia, and given current tensions, it may not be that easy to go to. I don't know. Um, but there are many things about Russia that are appealing to me. I think it's a very cultured land. Literature. It's a great country of literature. I read somewhere. Now, I have to admit, the book I read this in was quite old now, but I imagine the same applies. That even poor Russians can afford books. I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently books are very, very cheap in Russia, so they're widely available. And Russians, literature is a very big part of the culture. That's something we have in common with the UK, actually. I mean, we in the UK have in common with Russia. I'm currently reading War and Peace, which of course is a marathon of a book, and it doesn't help that I'm a very slow reader. But the number of great Russian writers, Fyodor um, Dostoevsky, um, Alexander Pushkin, not Trotsky, Tolstoy, Leo Tolstoy. So Russia really does have a wealth of literature and literary merit. Architecture, now, this is something, again, that I really appreciate when it comes to Russia. Not so much modern, i.e., Soviet era architecture, though some of that is actually pretty interesting as well. I mean, if you look at Russian cemeteries, say for instance you have someone who was an astronaut, a cosmonaut, they'll actually have a big sculpture above the tomb. I find that very interesting. Some may find it a bit garish, but I find it interesting. But also older architecture, going back to Peter the Great, the Kremlin, but also St. Basil's Cathedral, the onion domes, famous onion domes. That to me is one of the world's most beautiful pieces of architecture. It's almost like something out of a fairy tale. It really is beautiful, and I'd love to see that. And it isn't just in St. Basil's Cathedral, that's the most famous example, but similar architecture is dotted in churches and cathedrals around Russia. So for me, that's something that's very appealing, and I'd love to see it in real life. People, the Russian people. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to everyone. There will be Russians I don't have much time for, but that's the same with everywhere. I honestly believe that Russians on a low level basis, on a everyday basis, are decent people. That's the impression I get. I get the impression they're very modest people, despite the image that we sometimes get of Russia being a very patriotic country, which it is. But I honestly get quite a good vibe from the ordinary Russian people. When I say ordinary Russians interviewed on various news networks, they always strike me as being down to earth and somewhat amicable. Obviously, this doesn't apply to everyone, but it's an honest observation. So yeah, I would include the Russian people there. Landscapes, well, that sort of comes into the sheer size of the country. Russia's a vast country, and there's going to be some incredibly beautiful landscapes there. And actually, contrary to what people think, there is quite a wide selection of wildlife as well. We sometimes see Russia as this big, vast, remote wasteland, which isn't true. Um, such a vast country. I believe there is more carboniferous wood in Russia than the rest of the world combined. I think it's something like that. Music. Again, this is like literature. Russia really does have a wealth of music and great composers. Prokofiev, of course, um, and there's many others. Tchaikovsky. Um, so Russian classical music is way up my list of favorite classical music. Um, so yeah, I think Russia really is a very cultured country, and I do hope one day to get the opportunity to travel there, whether it be in Moscow or St. Petersburg, I don't know, but just the sheer size of the place is incredible. Another thing about people, by the way, Russians are diverse people, numerous different ethnic groups. So we tend to think of Russians. I suppose the stereotype would be the Ivan Drago character from Rocky Four, like kind of European looking, blonde, or that would be a sort of stereotype. But the truth is, Russia is a very diverse land. Um, Not diverse in the sense of Western multiculturalism, but diverse internally. There's a lot of different ethnic groups: Tajiks, Uzbeks, Chechens. I mean Uzbek Russians, not Uzbeks. And such a vast country, there's lots of various republics within the Russian borders. So yeah, Russia is a country that's always fascinated me. It's up there with the countries that have always held appeal for me: the United States, um, France, China, and Russia are probably the four countries that interest me more than any others. Possibly India as well. And by the way, that's nothing against any other countries. It's just that those countries in particular have always been fascinating to me. So that's it. That's some of the positive things I can think of when I think of Russia. And I'm sure there's many more where that came from. Russian film, again, that's something I find very interesting. I haven't seen very many Russian films, but I've seen a few. And the direction or style is quite unique. It's not quite documentary style, but it's done in a way that's very, I would say, realist, sometimes surrealist. Um, but it's definitely something unique and something very interesting. One of the most interesting Russian films I saw was Russian Ark, which is basically about a group of historians who go through the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, going through Russian history. And the way it's done is very interesting. Um, so yeah, I'm sure there's many other things I could say, but I'll leave it there for now. I can't comment on Russian cuisine because I haven't had any, so I simply don't know. Russian vodka, of course, is the best in the world, needless to say. But yeah, those are a few of the things I like about Russia and appreciate about Russia. There's other things I dislike. I stand by my view on those things, but that's for another video. So long live the motherland, Russia, great country.